Are you ready to go back to school? Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kaelyn. I am a 6th year PhD candidate in history and African American studies at Yale University. And today we are heading back to school with a back to school essentials video. Now, I have made so many back to school videos, typically with vlogs, preparing to head back to campus. But today I wanted to share some of the things that I use every single day as a PhD student that I think would be helpful to you, to those of you that are going into PhD programs, but I think it's also helpful for any student. But before we do, I just want to quickly mention that this is back to school week with Accepted Society. This is a 5-day program where we're going to be partnering with Paper Republic, Ultra Speaking, Dr. Andrea Severson, Dr. Sydney Conroy, and I am also going to be doing a reset in order to give you all the resources and skills to prepare for back to school. If you are seeing this in the future, then I'm going to have the playlist down below. But if you would like to actually join and participate, then there's going to be a link to a 30-day free trial to Accepted. This is only going to be available the first week in September. So as soon as back to school week is over, that link is no longer going to be valid and it'll be removed from the description. So if you've been thinking about trying out Accepted Society, which is a community for academics and lifelong learners, then you can go ahead and check that out below. But that's not why you're here. You are here for this back to school essentials. So let's go ahead and dive straight into it. First and foremost, you need a reliable computer. Now, personally, I use a MacBook Pro. However, I am also a content creator and business owner. So I don't necessarily think you need all of this processing power unless you're doing data analytic work and building databases. For things that require a lot of data storage, I recommend getting a MacBook Pro or something with a pretty serious processor, which primarily relies on memory. So I personally have the 14-inch because I wanted something a little bit smaller. And I also got the additional storage with multiple terabytes just because, again, I'm a content creator. So I needed to be able to edit YouTube videos on this, but I've also used this for all of my dissertation writing projects, my data analysis, as well as my legal databases. I do qualitative coding of statutes in Colonial Virginia. So I build all of my databases on my computer using Excel or Google Sheets. However, if you are somebody that is coding with a sophisticated language such as R or Python, then I also recommend getting something with a little bit more oomph. Another thing that makes a big difference in my workflow is my monitor. I get so many questions about this because it's huge. I have the Asus 49-inch ultra-wide gaming monitor, and I use this for everything from editing YouTube videos to working on my dissertation. What's helpful about this is that I can actually have basically 3 different screens open at a time. And I typically am on a study session with Accepted Society. So we have these community-led study sessions that are typically run on Zoom. And so I'll have that to the left. I'll usually have what I'm writing or what I'm sourcing in terms of an article in the middle. And then I'll also have my notes off to the right. You do not need a monitor this big. It is a very expensive, very sizable piece of kit, and I got it specifically because I am a content creator. I don't think that you necessarily need something this big in order to write a dissertation. I wrote my entire thesis for undergrad just on my laptop. I wrote my entire dissertation for my master's degree with just a simple monitor that we got from Goodwill. You don't need something fancy. However, if you do, then I have some links to some monitors that I recommend down below. But like I said, you don't need to spend a bunch of money on a monitor. I also recommend looking at places like Facebook Marketplace or other local resale sites, just because monitors are things that people do sell fairly often. And so it's quite easy to find them secondhand or refurbished at a discount. Next up is my iPad. Now, I have tried so many different tablets. I was actually sent a Remarkable a couple of years ago. I have tried other tablets, but I always just come back to this. Back when I first got my iPad during my master's degree, I got the iPad Pro. Now, what I will say is that you don't need that much processing power. What I use this mostly for are notes when I'm attending lectures or annotating PDFs. I use the application GoodNotes, and it's excellent because I can upload all of my PDFs and they actually show up by the cloud on all of my devices. It's how I annotate primary sources as well as secondary sources. It has all of my literature right here, and I use this on all of my devices. It is also one of the applications that I used in order to take notes when I was teaching. As a TF at Yale, I had to teach a class, and I would attend a lecture that was led by my advisor or one of my committee members. and then I would be the one teaching section. And so I did need to attend the lectures and actually take notes, or I would take notes when I'm auditing or when I'm at a conference. And I personally really like handwriting my notes. And sometimes it's nice to have a physical copy, and sometimes it's nice to have a digital. Now, one of the distinctions that I make when deciding on whether to make my notes digital or physical is whether I'm going to need to cite it on the go. So oftentimes when it comes to conferences, I will probably go ahead and write my physical notes. However, if it's on an article or if it's for a lecture, then those are notes I'm likely going to be citing and checking out for years to come. So those are things that I want to make sure are available digitally. In addition to having a tablet that has the access to a pencil, I also recommend having a screen protector. I have been using the Paperlike screen protector for years. I started using them back in, I think, 2020, maybe 2021. And I have tried the knockoff versions. I've tried others, but I just find that the Paperlike works the best. This is not sponsored. I've worked with them in the past. However, I personally think that the Paperlike is the best screen protector that I've used. It does actually feel very nice, and I have repurchased it with my own money many times over. So I highly recommend having some kind of tablet. However, like I said, with the monitor, these are things that I wouldn't recommend necessarily buying new. They are so easy to access secondhand and refurbished. So definitely check out other options and sites so that way you can save a bit of money. Next up is a hard drive. This is something I recommend for anybody, but especially for PhD students. Back up absolutely everything. Back up your notes, back up your PDFs, back up your drafts. Everything and anything should go and back up to a hard drive. Don't just rely on the cloud. I personally recommend buying something that is at least 1 to 2 terabytes. Now, again, I'm a content creator, so I tend to buy things that have a significant amount of storage. I believe this is a 4 terabyte hard drive, and I'll have some links to ones that I recommend. I actually don't really like the Lacy. I have the Seagate hard drives. They're just currently plugged in, and those are the ones that I recommend the most. They've just been the most reliable to me and the easiest to plug into different computers. I don't know where I would be if it wasn't for noise canceling headphones. Now, I have the AirPods Pro, which does have the ability to cancel out noise. I wouldn't say it's the most effective. I used to actually have these over-the-head Sony headphones. The thing with headphones for me that I find quite challenging is that I really don't like pressure on the crown of my head. So I have had over-the-ear headphones, and they do technically work better, but they always tend to make the top of my head hurt. And I haven't really found a solution to that. I've tried the Sony, I've tried Bose, I've tried Apple, and every single one of them inevitably starts to give me a bit of a headache. And so that's why I personally prefer the in-ear earbud options. Now, one thing I'll note is that I actually don't recommend the AirPods personally. They work well, but they've had issues with Bluetooth connectivity over the years. And although I've had them for several years now, I just think that something like a Bose or a Sony would probably work better just based on the experiences that my friends have had with those products. I also want to mention that this isn't just for getting your studying done. I personally really struggle with noise sensitivity. It is something that has been a significant hindrance to basically every social occasion that I've ever been at or when I'm out in public. And so having these just in my ears to kind of cancel out some of the noise, but not all of it, has been really helpful, especially as I'm, walking to lecture or if I'm in the library. It's not necessarily that I'm listening to music. It's just that it helps kind of muffle the sound, which for somebody with pretty severe noise sensitivity has been a godsend. Next up is a journal or planner. This is my Paper Republic A5 portfolio, and it is absolutely stunning. I've had it for about 2 months now. It has the Accepted Society logo embossed, as well as this little charm, as well as this charm that says Accepted Society in Pursuit of Knowledge. This is from July Rose. And inside I have my diary. So I have my journal that I write down my thoughts day to day. I also have my Midori notebooks for the individual chapters of my dissertation, as well as my dissertation diary. Now, I will do a full video on my dissertation diary at some point, but this is where I track basically all of my thoughts about my dissertation, the progress that I'm making in different sections, the literature that I'm reviewing, and it's just a really beautiful physical way of manifesting my thoughts and my overall experience of the dissertation. Additionally, I have this everyday carry. So this is basically my everything notebook. This is from Polisky, and this is an American brand that I recently found, and it is much less expensive than some of the other leather journals on the market. But what's most important is not the journal itself. In this case, it is my planner. I have a planner from Sterling Ink, and this is where I write down my schedule, my appointments, my goals for the month, and everything in between. It's where I do my weekly reset. It's how I stay organized. And I think that even if you are somebody that loves using a digital calendar, as I do, I think having a physical manifestation of your plans, of your time, is just really helpful in getting organized. And also just taking some of the mental clutter and putting it somewhere else, just getting it out of your head and actually having it manifest in a physical way somewhere else. So I have my planner in here. I also have my other notebooks, but I'll do a full video on my journals soon. Now, the next two things are not necessarily very sexy, but they are so freaking useful. And that is my book stand and my travel laptop stand. Now, I just got both of these on Amazon, and what's really helpful is whenever I have a book that I am doing research out of or I'm taking notes, having it standing on my desk open so that way I can go ahead and write down my notes makes a big difference with my overall physical comfort. I'm somebody that suffers with chronic back and neck pain, especially in my upper back and my shoulders and into my neck. So staring over a book is really quite painful. And having a book stand and somewhere to place it where I can look up just makes a really big difference when you are sitting for hours taking notes, reading books, and preparing for classes or working on your dissertation. And a similar note goes for having a laptop stand. Now, this is really light. I wanted something that I could easily take with me to the library that would help me set up my laptop in a more kind of ergonomic way. I'm very tall, and one thing that I really struggle with, especially when sitting at the library, is that feeling of like hunching over my laptop. But with this, I can just kind of pop it out and then set it up in such a way that I can actually have my laptop sitting up so that I don't have to look down quite so dramatically. It's really easy. This one just lives in my backpack and it comes with me everywhere. We've now come to the last two items that I'm going to discuss in this back to school essentials, and that is your bag. Now, those of you that have watched my videos for a long time will recognize my city backpack. This is from Harbour London. I've had it for 3 years. I absolutely love it. However, sometimes it's a little bit overkill, and I will also say that sometimes I struggle to recommend it just because it is an expensive investment. And that brings me to another option, which is the new everyday shopping bag from Harbour London. So this has the same leather, however, it is much lighter just because of the design, and it is the perfect kind of overall carry for when you're heading to the library and you just need to bring a couple of things with you. This perfectly fits my notebooks, my laptop, my chargers, anything that I'm going to need for the day, but it is just much lighter in design than my city backpack. Harbour London was kind enough to gift this to me after several years of me carrying around my city backpack. The city backpack I paid for myself a couple of years ago when I was heading to the archives in London, and I'm really excited because I have been using this last couple of days. I actually took it on a trip with me to Wales this past weekend, and it just fits so much stuff. And it's just the perfect size because it's not huge, so you can't fit a ton of stuff in here, but it is the perfect size to take everything that you're going to need in order to study. I really love the brand. I've been using them for years. I also have their little leather organizer, and I just think that they make really good quality products. So highly recommend making sure that you have a strong everyday carry backpack or bag for your studies. You also want to get something that's going to last you throughout your entire PhD or your entire studies. So making sure that you don't have something that's flimsy, making sure something that is relatively waterproof for the things that you're going to carry inside of it, and having something that just goes with everything. And that's why I really love my backpack and my new everyday bag. We've now come to the last thing that I'll mention, which to me is perhaps the most important thing to invest in as a student, but especially as a graduate student, and that is a good desk and chair. So a couple of months ago, I got a new desk from Oaky Wood, and it is so unbelievably beautiful. I have now been using it for several months, and the design, it's gorgeous, but the actual functionality is the thing that I have found to be the most helpful. As I said earlier, I suffer from chronic back pain, and so having a standing desk where I can just kind of articulate where it's most comfortable, it makes a big difference. And it's not even that I'm using the standing function, it's just being able to move it a couple of inches here and there so that it's more comfortable for me to sit for long periods of time. Additionally, I have my autonomous AI ergonomic chair. I've had this since I started my PhD. I had one when I was living in New Haven. I got another one when I moved to London. And as somebody who has chronic back pain, it is genuinely the only chair that I can sit in that does not give me pain. I can sit in this chair for 8 hours a day and not be in pain, not be fatigued. I also love that it's really customizable, that I can move it up and down, that it's big enough in the base that I can cross my legs, and I just think it's so comfortable. This is also not sponsored. I just really love this chair, and I think actually investing in a proper seat and a desk that is going to work with your body rather than against your body is the biggest investment that you can make and is going to make the biggest difference in your overall health and your studies. So that is the conclusion of this essentials video. I have been wanting to do this for a while and just talk a little bit about the kind of physical things that I use every day. I'm also going to make a video at some point about the digital tools that I use as a PhD student. So if you have questions about that, or if there's something that you want me to highlight in that video, please let me know in a comment below. And to finalize this video, I would love to know in a comment, what is your number one back to school essential? What is something that you need in order to do your best academic work? I would love to know if it's something that was mentioned in this video or if there's something that I missed, and I look forward to seeing all of your responses. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope to see you at Back to School Week at Accepted Society, and good luck this academic year. I will see you all very soon. Bye, friends.